before it starts recording. I'm waiting for there it is. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of the Low Budget Interview Show. And with me today is a comic book writer known for The Sixth Gun, Harrow County, all sorts of stuff, podcaster, part of a Shared World anthology series, Cullen Bunn.
Hey, how are you?
I'm all right. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Doing all
All
right.
right. Cool. I could have just kept listing things that you've done, but what I like to do is kind of put people on the spot right off the bat.
Oh, great! I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad I'm here.
To introduce yourself to the audience, if you had to write your author bio right now, what would it say?
He tried. He really tried. No, that's my epitaph. So my name's Cullen Bunn. I've been writing comics now for a good long while. I've written for almost every publisher in the business. I've done a lot of creator-owned books, like you mentioned, The Sixth Gun, Harrow County, Bone Parish, Regression. But I've also done a lot of books for Marvel, like Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe, and Uncanny X-Men and Magneto. And I've worked for DC with Sinestro and Lobo. And again, that list, there's a big long list of publishers I've worked with over the years. Right now I'm doing a lot of creator-owned projects, and I am also doing Shadow Man for Valiant, which comes out in just a few I guess it comes out the end of April, so however many weeks that is from now. But yeah, I do a lot of comics, and I've been kicking around for a good long while now.
All right, great. And today is New Comic Book Day. Did you pick anything up?
I did not. I didn't leave the house. I don't feel like I've left the house much I know I haven't left the house much in a year. And my local comic shop closed down a couple of years ago. Ooh. So most of the stuff I would read would be in trade anymore or digitally, but I did not get any new comics today.
Oh no!
I feel very, very guilty. I do have some of the bad idea books on my list. I have a friend who runs a comic shop that's several hours away, and he pulls books for me constantly, but I told him I think a couple of the bad idea books either came out this week or last, and I asked for a couple of those to be set aside for me, but I'm several weeks to months behind on new comic reading right now.
I actually, in January, I wasn't working, and I was a year behind on my new comic reading, and I caught up.
Wow.
It took almost the whole month of January, but I caught up on all my back issues, the monthly issues. I have tons of trades I haven't read yet. But didn't something of yours come out today?
I believe a trade came out for Rogue Planet, which collects the 5-issue series from Oni Press. That came out today. I don't even have a copy of that yet. So,
what?
So there you go. I know, right?
Unfortunately, my shop didn't get it. Or any extra copies, so I did not pick that up today.
Well, the good news with the trades is your shops can get them in. If you didn't get it today or they didn't order it normally, your shops can get them in. And Rogue Planet's a great book. It's a nice hefty trade paperback, but it's a big science fiction horror story that if you like movies like Alien or The Thing or Event Horizon, it'll be right up your alley. So
I'm looking forward to it.
My life with going, I haven't had a regular shop in a couple of years. And like I said, my friend and sometimes co-writer Jimmy Z. Johnston owns a comic shop a few hours from here. And I'll send him emails on the regular. Hey, make sure you pull one of these for me. So I'm guessing he has a stack, several feet high of books for me, because I also tell him, pull these games for me, pull these trading cards for me. So he keeps a little box of Cullen books until the day comes that I can actually visit his shop again.
Nice. I did coincidentally, yesterday, got this in the mail.
Oh, Blossom 666.
Yes. So I do have plenty of Cullen Bunn stuff
Yeah,
to
there you
read.
go. That was a fun book because that was my I guess that was my first Archie project. Yeah, so I was doing for Archie, and it was a great. They came to me and said, "We want you to do a horror title about Cheryl Blossom and her brother Jason." And I said, "Well, why don't we do a story that's something like Cruel Intentions meets The Omen?" So it's it's Cheryl and Jason, and one of them is destined to become the Antichrist, and they're competing for that privilege.
That's I read. I think The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina was the first of the horror Archie books that I read, and I loved that. So I've been picking up uh, all the other titles, all the horror titles, and like I said, this just arrived yesterday from Amazon, and I'm excited to dig in.
That's awesome. Well, I hope you like it. It was a fun book for me. I'd like to do more with those characters and more in that world for sure.
And I have a little stack of visual aids for the audience. I do have to say, you mentioned um, for some reason it's Deadpool Back in Black that always sticks in my mind, and I had completely forgotten that you did the would you call it a 4-book set of Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe?
So, well, it's weird because Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe. The Kilogy is the first three series.
There's the first.
That's the first one, and then I followed it up with Deadpool Killustrated, and then Deadpool Kills Deadpool, and then a few years later, I was at Marvel's offices, and on a whim, I said, "You know what we should do? We should do a new, since everything's changed, all your characters have changed, everything's different than it was when we did the original series. Let's do a new Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe." And that first one has been, and I think still is, one of their perennial bestsellers. So they were like, "Yeah, let's do it," but it is not connected to the original trilogy in any way.
But I almost pulled the Killustrated as the visual aid because I just love the cover. I was a huge fan of the Classics Illustrated back in the day. So, but
that was all a bunch. Those were all fun books to work on. I mean, it was and it was fun to try to figure out how to one up. How do we once he kills the Marvel Universe. They called me then and they said, "So what would you do as a sequel?" Well, he's already killed the Marvel Universe. So the original one is going to be Deadpool Kills the Cosmic Universe, but they decided they didn't want to do that because I think Guardians of the Galaxy, the movie, was in the works or getting ready to come out. So then we did Killustrated so that we could do pretty much whatever we wanted. But really, all the Deadpool books I did kind of spun out of conversations that came up for what do we follow Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe with.
Well, that kind of leads into my first official question, interviewee type question.
All right.
Which is, when you're working for one of the big two, and for if there's anybody out there who doesn't know, I'm talking about DC and Marvel. Do you go in with your own pitch? Do they come to you with an idea? Is it a mix? How does that work? How does it come together when you're going to work on a project like something like, say, Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe?
So it's a mix, but I would say that probably 90% of the time, the books that you see on the shelf, maybe more than that, maybe 95% of the time, it's Marvel coming to the writer or the creative team. I pitched tons and tons of ideas to Marvel. And most of the time, those just either go unanswered or just are kind of shuffled off to the side and not worried. They don't worry about them. I think of all my years working for Marvel, maybe 4 or 5 maybe were my original pitches that they weren't trying to develop something. And then most of the time, what you've got is they call you and they say, "We'd like you to do a book about Magneto. What would you do?" And then I can pitch whatever I want to do with Magneto. Or we'd like you to, in the case of Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe, they called and said, "We want to do a book called Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe. We don't know what it's about, what happens besides what's in the title. What would you do?" And then, we do that. And then, like, then there's a certain percentage of titles, like, as I said, after Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe, they said, all right, so what do we do next? And I pitched Deadpool in the Secret Wars, which they didn't want to do at the time. They eventually did that series. And I pitched Night of the Living Deadpool as a title. And they eventually did that series, but not right then. But those were like conversations with the editor and I. It wasn't a formal pitch I put together and sent to them. The couple that jump immediately to mind that were absolutely, I pitched, they weren't doing the book, and I pitched it to them. I pitched them Fearless Defenders. I pitched it as a different title, but they came back and said, we want to do it, but let's do it as a Defenders title. And I pitched them as Guardians of the Galaxy. And that one sat on their shelf. That one sat on their bulletin board as a book they wanted to do for several years before they finally called back and said, yeah, we're ready to do it. So, it's a little bit of both, but most of the titles you see, an editor or the publishers come back down and said, we want to do, a Magneto book or an X-Men book. What would you do with it? Sometimes they have a little more guidance. Sometimes they have very, very specific guidance of what they want to do in the series. Those are a lot less fun to work on. So,
I bet.
yeah.
But it's kind of like Sharknado. You come up with the title first, and then
right. Yeah, I mean, the worst I ever, it wasn't bad. It wasn't a bad experience, but the weirdest was years ago, I was called to do a Black Widow one-shot, and it was during the Fear Itself event. So they said, we want to do Fear Itself, Black Widow. And they said, Cullen, in this issue, Black Widow, or a group of terrorists are in Paris, and they have stolen the nuclear football, and the Black Widow has to stop them, and the events in Paris are getting in their way. So that was there were very specific elements they wanted in the story. And I was like, all right. And I wrote it and added some, characters that I knew I tried to work some characters in that I wanted to write that I thought would be fun for me. And I turned it in, and a couple of weeks went by, and then they came back and said, we forgot to tell you that everyone in Paris was turned to stone. I'm like, well, that's a big note. That's something you should have told me when you were giving those very specifics. So we ended up changing it to a different city because there wasn't time to change for the art. So it changed to a different city. But that's why there's on that issue, the Eiffel Tower's on the issue, but she never goes near the Eiffel Tower.
Oops, we forgot to mention this.
We forgot to mention this kind of massive plot point. Okay.
Now, does it work the same way when you're doing something for a smaller publisher, or is that just you pitching?
Well, if it's creator owned, like the Six Gun or Harrow County or any of those titles, it's just me. That's all me, or me and the creative team. That that sometimes the artist develops it with me, or sometimes I develop it to begin with. But that's all. All creator owned. Sometimes the editorial will come in and may have notes or suggestions before it starts going, but it's 90 to 100%. Every one of those books is all the creative team.
And how do you pull together a creative team for something?
Well, it's easier these days than it was back in my youth when I was first trying to get into comics. Sometimes the publisher or the editor, with Marvel or DC, it's almost always they pull the creative team together. They might ask you if there's people you want to work with, but it's almost always they have a creative team they call it casting the book. They want to cast the book with, a certain writer, certain, artist, certain colorist, all the way down. And that's most of the time with, the big two, that's what you get. With creator owned, sometimes it's friends of mine or other creators that I've known or I talk to, and we want to put a book together and develop a title together, and we go together to the publisher. Sometimes I put a pitch together and I send it to the publisher, and they find an artist that they would like me to work with, or several artists, and we do sort of a series of tests and things like that. So it can go any number of ways. Sometimes I'll submit something to an editor and I'll say, I would love to work with these three artists, and we'll try to get one of those artists and see if they're available. It all depends on availability, the scheduling, when the publishers want to put the books out, things like that.
Now, when you, if it's something you've developed yourself, because I imagine it would be different if you started working with the artist. But do you write very detailed scripts? Do you give the artist a lot of freedom in what they can do?
So someone asked me not long ago because there's certain artists that I've worked with now, almost hundreds of issues that we've worked together. And they asked me, do you write abbreviated scripts since you've worked with them for so long? And I don't. I write the same kind of script my scripting style, the format may have changed a little bit, but I write the same style of script that I have written since I started. And it's detailed enough, but it's not like an Alan Moore script, which if you ever see one of those, yeah. a panel might be several pages of text.
Right.
So thousands of words. Mine are, a paragraph to a couple of paragraphs for a panel description, and I write the dialogue and I go from there. I also, but I definitely, it's a collaboration. So the artists need to have as much freedom to be creative. Almost every artist I work with knows if they want to add panels, condense panels, that's all on the table for how they're going to present it visually. And some artists stick very close to what I've written. They follow it. And others, just go out and will add and subtract and change. And in the end, we make it, we try to make it all look like it was supposed to look that way from the very beginning.
Well, I know I imagine you've got Stan Lee scripts at one end and Alan Moore at the other.
Mine are somewhere right in the middle, right? It's the Stan Lee scripts, the old Marvel style. I hate it. I hate writing that way. And I thought I'd love it. I was like, oh, this is going to be that sounds like an easy way to write a script. But I just don't feel like I get the story across that I would like to tell. And I've done it a few times, usually at the request of the artist. Like, hey, let's try this out. And almost always it's like, the artist too, I didn't really love that. That wasn't my favorite way to get a script. I can write those, old Marvel style scripts if I need to for some reason, but it's not my favorite. It's and I don't know how Alan Moore had the time to write those scripts that he wrote, which those are just crazy detailed. I love looking at them and I love the comics that resulted from them, but wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. All right. I lost my train of so let's see. I'm going to cheat.
All right.
Okay, so Deadpool
now I know I can cheat too if I need to.
Deadpool Kills Marvel Universe, 4 issues. Do you ever find is it tough to get the story you want in those 4 issues? Do you ever ask for more? Can you ask for more?
It's always tough to get the story I want into the issues. Always. No matter how many issues it is. Yeah. If it's a 12-issue series, a 4-issue series, a 1-issue one-shot, it's always tough. You can sometimes ask for more. It depends on the budget. Usually it's not budgeted for the book, and it's tough to get those decisions pushed through. But you can ask. And in theory, if I know how many issues it's going to be, I do a lot of outlining. So that I try to get to a point where I'm not going to, be running over or anything like that before I even start scripting. It's still hard though. Even in the outline phase, I just sit there and say, man, I really wish I had more space. I just outlined a comic yesterday, and if it wasn't, let me see how much of this I can show without. So I'm folding this over because this was the original outline sheet. So if you see this, you'll see that it has, this was like this. So one of the things I do is I kind of write out all the beats. This isn't my outline. It's a beat sheet. I write out all the beats, and then I write how many pages I think that beat will take to tell in the story. So this is what they usually look like. Is you see that's all scratched up on the side. There's a lot of numbers that are scratched out and rewritten. That's because for this 22-page comic, I outlined 49 pages. So when I once I added up all the pages I wanted to tell, it was 49 pages. So then I had to go back and I have to, I can cut this scene down by a page and this scene down by a page, and I can condense these two scenes. But I always want more. I always want more space to just, to cut loose. And it just, comics is not the medium for that. It doesn't work that way because you're always constrained by the number of issues in a series, the number of pages in an issue, and the number of panels on a page. You're always you have those. That's why outlining is such a big deal for me when I'm doing these, because heaven forbid I start writing that thing and write 10 pages and then realize I've got 39 more pages to fit into a 22-page book.
Well, when it comes to something, say, like Piecemeal, this lovely one-shot,
yes,
from Aftershock, do you have a little more leeway as far as page count, or is that still locked in?
Well, that one, so I think they originally said we want to make these, they had a certain page count in mind, and then I outlined the story, and I called back and said, well, I kind of need a few more pages, and they're like, absolutely, let's just make it a few extra pages so that you can tell the story you want. I knew with Piecemeal that it was going to be a one-shot, 40-something page story, somewhere around there. So that helped me, plan it. But yeah, as I was doing the outline, I was like, guys, I really just need, I think I asked for 4 extra pages or something like that. And they agreed. So thank you.
And then this is prestige format, I believe they call it.
Yes.
Is that an editorial or publisher's decision? Do you have any say in that as well? How that's going to come out?
Sometimes, not in this case. So Piecemeal was one of Aftershock has this line that they're just starting up called I think they call it One Shocks, and they want them to do almost sort of like DC's Black Label in size, so it's a little bit bigger, a little bit magazine sized, and it's got sort of a square bind to it. And they're doing a series of those. Piecemeal was just the first of the One Shocks. But that was their plan. That was what Joe Pruitt at Aftershock, that was what he really wanted to do with that he had a vision for what that series of books would look like.
So let's, I guess we'll talk about one of your upcoming things, Eden. Is that part of the One Shock?
Yes. So Eden is another one-shot story. It'll be published in the same sort of oversized format. It's another horror story that I'm doing. I can't remember the release date of it right this second, but it's coming out in a couple of months. But yeah, it'll be just like Piecemeal. It's its own story. You can read it and enjoy it, and that's it. It's a complete story all by itself. I kind of see them almost like just, it's like you go into a movie and you watch a movie, you get it, and you're out, and that's the end of it. That's kind of the way these stories work. But yeah, Eden's a fun story for me. I'm working with, you mentioned Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe before. The artist I worked with on that book is doing the art on Eden, Dalibor Talajic, and he's doing the art on Eden. It's the most beautiful book. I mean, it's gorgeous. Even the really horrible stuff is gorgeous, and it's a story about a tattoo artist who's kind of in a rut. His life is going nowhere, and he's kind of stuck in this series of guilt and depression. And he meets this woman who comes in for a tattoo, and he does the tattoo for her, and everything's great, except a few weeks later she comes back and the tattoo's gone. And it kind of and she keeps coming back. She gets a tattoo, she comes back, and the tattoo's gone again. And she keeps coming back, and it opens up this mystery and this romance between the two. And it goes into some really dark places.
Well, I have it ordered. All right. I have this notebook here. I have a bunch of
I got one of those
hardback Marvel notebooks. But this is my ordering comics notebook, where I go through all the previews, and I don't know if this will. Let's see if you'll be able to see it all. I've got Eden.
There it is. I see it.
Um, that's how I order way too much, and I have to keep track, or I forget what I'm getting. So I started.
Yeah, do it. That's a way to do it. I used to I love going through I used to love going through the previews catalog and picking all the stuff I was going to order for the, for the month, and then realized I was really ordering way too much. But
Yeah. I the last Wednesday of the month when the previews comes out is almost the most exciting comic book day for me. I get to look through that and see the new stuff, and we'll get to it. I think towards the end of this, some of the other new stuff you've got coming out because you've had a few things pop up in the
Sure.
previews recently.
Yeah.
Issue 1 or first issues.
Yeah. I think back because I used to manage a comic book shop, and I remember that when previews would come out, all the managers of all the shops would get together it was basically an all day long meeting where we just talked about all the new comics that were coming out. We would go through it basically line by line of what we were getting for our stores. Always my favorite day working because it was just like sitting around talking about all the new. It was like going through when you're a kid, you go through the JCPenney catalog of all the toys.
Yeah.
It was basically doing that with comics.
It's a little disappointing that DC is just online now as far as their catalog because it's
Oh,
not the
it's
same as
catalog.
flipping through.
Yeah, their catalog's not even print now, huh?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, no, you have to look at it online. Um, and I mean it looks like it always has, but it's
sure,
just digital now.
sure.
Excuse me. I have a great comic book store I go to now. I just started going to them last year. I'm going to give a shout out to Eric and Ed at Comics Argo. Um, and they do live videos twice a week where they will auction things off,
Hmm.
and I'm not sure it's not really an auction part of it. They'll just show a comic and give a price, and whoever in the live chat,
Yeah,
whoever claims it first. Um,
yeah. My
and
friends, there's a comic shop in the wonderfully named town of Peculiar, Missouri, uh,
nice.
called Phoenix Comics, and they do a lot of videos, and they do the same thing. They'll show, as they're, they'll talk comics or whatever, but then they'll also show comics and let people claim them, I guess.
Yeah, that's um and I actually the wall that I'm looking at in front of me, I have I don't know 50 comics stuck up on the wall, and
Right.
almost all of it is just old great covers that I've gotten through that. Uh but on Twitter recently, relatively recently, you were posting your favorite covers, and one of them was Gargoyle #1.
Yeah.
And I just through that claiming live video thing got the mini series.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you right now who drew that series. For
No,
the
I
life of me, I can't remember. But I remember as a kid reading it, and the art in that book, it had this amazing cross-hatching technique in it. And it was just so awesome. I remember loving it so much as a kid, and I cannot for the life of me remember who drew it right now. And I'm looking it up, actually. I'm trying to find it, but it's going to take me forever. It'll take me forever to dig through it. But it was gorgeous, and the cover's gorgeous. So yeah, when they were talking about, I can't remember what other covers I said were my favorites. That was just one. I tried just. Oh, I know. There had to be a Transformers in there
there was a
because
Transformers. There was I believe Micronauts with Man Thing.
yeah, that's the first comic I mean, it wasn't the first comic I read, but it was the comic that made me fall in love with comics in a big
And
way.
I don't remember there
It
were a
had to
couple
be New
other.
Mutants 18, probably. It had to be one of the Sienkiewicz New Mutants because that was such a big, shocker of a comic for me. So yeah, I mean, and if I'd have sat down and really thought about it, I could have listed favorite covers all day long because uh, I was, that's just who I was, especially in that era of buying so many comics. Most of them for a quarter out of quarter boxes, but still a lot of comics.
I this is sort of a heyday for me buying back my youth. Between Comics Are Go, and they'll bundle mini series and maxi series together, and they have a
Yeah,
section
love
where you
that.
go through.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, I got the Gargoyle, Jack of Hearts. Used to love Jack of Hearts. Found that
Oh, I
amazing.
love that series too. Yeah.
Uh, uh, I got both of the Joe Lansdale, Jonah Hex minis
Great,
there,
great
which is
books.
all stuff I used to have, but I twice in my life I've sold my entire collection. So I'm
Yeah,
sort of buying it back.
yeah. I sold mine as well when I was going to college. I had a massive comic book collection. Mostly thanks to my dad, who had a great job and was willing to negotiate with dealers and everything. But I had a comic book collection that I wish I hadn't sold now because I had a run of X-Men in it, from 1 to whatever was current in 1989. And we also had the first 20 something ish, 15 or 20 issues of Spider-Man, the Amazing Fantasy 15, and then just countless other just thousands of comics. And I sold them to pay for college. Um, and I really wish I hadn't.
I sold mine when I went into the Air Force, and I had my big thing was at the time Iron Man was my favorite,
Mm-hmm.
and I had most of the Tales of Suspense that had Iron Man.
Oh,
I did not have his origin issue, but I had Hawkeye's first appearance.
nice.
Um, so I had most of those, and then between issues 1 and 200, I was only missing 17 issues.
That's awesome.
But and that's the other thing about nowadays with the epic collections and omnibuses
Yeah.
coming out. I have the first four Iron Man epic collections.
Mm.
I can't wait to the 100 to 150. I think is one of my favorite runs in any comic in Iron Man. I can't wait till that epic collection till I get my hands on that. But I've got Master of Kung Fu was one of my favorite books, and I
Oh,
have
yeah.
all four volumes of the omnibus. Um, so yeah, as I said, I'm buying back my youth.
Yeah, I do a lot of that. I'm not trying to get everything. I am trying to recollect the X-Men again because it's not even about the X-Men as much. I love that they were my favorite super team at the time, but it was more about the, collecting it with my dad. And I think I'm either 10 or 14 issues away and I'll have the run again. So,
Nice.
so that's nice, although I'm not in a huge hurry to get them. I started telling myself I would only get issues if I see them in person. So I'm not ordering on eBay or anything like that. I'll only get them if I'm, at a convention or at a shop and see them, which slows it down a lot, really.
It
But
does.
but yeah, and I still have a lot of boxes of comics now. But the thing I'm into now is I get runs like you were talking about, and I get them bound into hardcovers.
Oh, nice.
Like my Micronauts run is all in a 4-volume hardcover, and I have dozens and dozens of those now. That instead of keeping them in a box, I'm actually reading them. Some people don't like the idea of chopping up the comic and putting it in a hardcover, but it's all right. I don't do it with anything too valuable. I don't I don't put anything too nice in the hardcovers.
You're not going to take that Amazing Fantasy 15 and
No, well, I've given up the dream of ever owning that one again. But no, if I did, I would not have it bound. And maybe if I finally took complete leave of all my senses, I'm just gonna bind up my Amazing Fantasy 15. That's the sign. If you see me do that, that means I've finally gone off that edge.
we need to call the doctors.
Yes, call somebody.
All right. Well, during yesterday's live video, I asked folks at the comic shop if they had any questions.
Uh-oh.
And I just one person sent me 3 questions.
Okay.
So his name is Coda Crose. I'm not sure how you pronounce his last name. Crose.
Okay.
And so he says, so my favorite Bunn run is As Guardians of the Galaxy. I'd like to know how he came up with the team members for that book, and if Marvel did, And how was it to write Throg?
Those are great questions. So, like I mentioned earlier, Asgardians of the Galaxy is a title that I pitched to Marvel years ago. And I've got the email somewhere nearby. I'm sure I could dig it up. But basically the email was, hey, I'd love to do a book with a bunch of Asgardians in outer space, and get this title. It's Asgardians of the Galaxy. So that was basically the pitch. And it kind of just sat there. I didn't think they were ever going to do it. And then, years later, they said, hey, let's do this book. And they did come to me with a suggested team. And I had always said I wanted Valkyrie on the team because Valkyrie is my favorite of those characters. But they said, in addition to Valkyrie, we'd like the Warriors 3 and the Lady Sif in the series. And I thought, that's fine, but really boring. I mean, it to me, it was not what I wanted to do with a series like this. I love those characters. I love the Warriors 3. I'd love to do a Warriors 3 series. But putting Valkyrie, the Warriors 3, Lady Sif, it's almost like the same bunch of characters, sitting in a group. And I said, let's do something a little weird. And they said, well, how weird do you want to get? And then I said, well, how about this? What if it's Valkyrie and Thunderstrike, who nobody hears anything of? There's some weirdos. And let's also put Kid Loki in it, and the Destroyer. Let's put the Destroyer in it, and let's put Throg in it, because that'll be fun. And so I really just said, let's make it as weird and bizarre as we can make it. And then they came back and said, that's great. Can we also put Angela? Their suggestion was Angela, because they had plans for her down the line, I guess. So that's where that all came about. It was, I wanted to do the weirdest team I could with the, under the banner of Asgardians. I think I pitched Beta Ray Bill in there as well, but he was engaged in some other shenanigans, so they couldn't put him in there. And then, yes, Throg is amazingly fun to write, because I wrote him like the frog from that old WB cartoon that was always singing, and then when people looked at him, he's just sitting there croaking. So Throg has these great inner monologue captions where he's talking about the fury of the storms and the Norns and, all these great things, but his only real dialogue is these croaks. He just croaks a lot, which I thought was a lot of fun. And he was arguably the most powerful member of that team, was a little frog, which I think is great. So yeah, I would have loved that series to be a little longer, to last a little longer. And, I had a lot of cool ideas for it. But c'est la vie, I got 10, 11 issues, which is pretty shocking for a series with that cast.
Well, I'll tell you, when I saw it in the previews, I was sold at Throg. I love Throg. And
it's still, that book has one of my favorite panels, because Throg leaves his hammer behind on the Shi'ar, one of the Shi'ar worlds, and Gladiator, who's, again, maybe the strongest character in the Marvel Universe, depending. There's a great panel of him trying to pick this tiny little hammer up, and he's pulling with all his might, and he can't pick the hammer up. And I love that image.
All right. Well, his second question. He says, of all your creator-owned projects, which one would you want to see turned into a movie or a show?
You're right. All of them. I want to see them all turned. It's tough. I could see those, so many of those as shows. So it's tough. I mean, the Six Gun I've seen as a show. If I reach up here on my desk, I've got the pilot episode of the Six Gun that we shot for NBC right here, always within arm's reach. So I've seen that, but I'd still like to see it. I'd like people to see it. I'd like people to see the show, a Six Gun show. I've written the pilot for a Harrow County series. I think, I've been involved with the development of various shows based on different titles. So all of them, I think the Six Gun or Harrow County would make great TV or movies. So I'd love to see that. And it's a weird world out there. in terms of Hollywood. There's a lot going on.
I will say, the Sixth Gun is the first time your name registered for me. 'Cause I saw the title, I saw it in the previews, horror western. I was on board, and I picked it up and I read it, and that's when I was like, all right, who is writing this book? This is someone whose name I want to know.
Yeah, it's a book that got a lot of attention from a lot. I mean, I'd done books before, but it was the book that kind of put me on the map in a lot of ways. It's definitely the reason I was writing for Marvel and DC for so long. But yeah, it's a book that means a lot to me because in the world of creator-owned comics, it's tough to tell a long series, to tell a long story and to tell it the way you wanted to. And we did 50 issues of the Sixth Gun, and every issue we did exactly what we wanted, and we were able to tell exactly the story we wanted to tell. So that's I wear it as a badge of honor because that's no easy task.
It's a fantastic and beautiful book.
Oh yeah, Brian Herbert is one of the most underrated artists in the business. He is one of the best visual storytellers out there, and Bill Crabtree is an amazing colorist. So it was a comedy of riches in terms of being able to work with those guys.
All right, so he had one more question. He says his Asgardian Venom suit is in Marvel Future Fight. What is it like to have something like that where you can play in something you created in a book?
I didn't even know.
That's
so that's cool. My favorite was it Future Fight or it's one of those video games. The characters from Monsters Unleashed were in one of those games, which was fun to me because the lead character in Monsters Unleashed, Kai Kawade, Kid Kaiju, is inspired by my son. Oh. So I remembered when I saw the video game stuff, I went in because he loves video games. Like, check this out. This character is based on you. And look at all this. And he was kind of like, whatever. Okay. Kid, to live in this era where that doesn't impress you, because I would have wet my pants having a character, that might have been inspired by me in a video game. But
I've been killed in 3 books. And I still just try to work it into any conversation like I just did. It's exciting. It's exciting. I do have my comic book boxes. I only have 2 of the smaller art boxes that are now, and they are the Monsters Unleashed.
Yeah, that was a fun project, and yeah, they did a lot of cool stuff. Like I have some of those short boxes too. The Monsters Unleashed stuff. But he wasn't impressed with the video game version of that character, but I thought it was pretty cool. So.
All right, well, that's all the questions that he had, so I can get rid of that off of my phone. Now, it's a lot of comic book talk, so let's talk The Bungalow.
All right.
Was that... Now, at this point, I tend to think any podcast that I've just found came out of people coping with COVID and lockdown. But did The Bungalow start before? I didn't check the date.
Yeah, no, it started before, well before lockdown and COVID. So, it's been around a little while now. It was my wife is a big podcast fan. She's always been, she's been interested in podcasts, and she really loves podcasts where people just sit around and talk about whatever. And it was her suggestion. She'd been involved in a couple of other podcasts, and then she said, well, why don't we do one together? So it was really it was her brainchild to do it. And then, we just get together and we talk about comics, obviously, because it's a big part of our life, but we talk about just life in general and weirdness and music and whatever else we feel like discussing that week. So it's sort of a potluck of topics, so to speak. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. We need to get on a better schedule sometimes. I feel like we get to we could have recorded a ton of episodes over lockdown, but both of us kind of got to the point where we're like, do I feel like doing anything, or do I just want to sit here in the dark, do nothing? And we were leaning too much to the sit here and do nothing for a little bit, but it's fun when we can get together and do them for sure.
Well, I haven't been listening to it for long. I think you probably mentioned it in your newsletter. And so I looked it up, and the
Sure.
first one I listened to was the last one you recorded in 2020, I believe.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so now I've gone back to the beginning.
Going back in time.
And I suppose it's a good sign that you and your wife have chemistry.
I guess. I mean, sometimes she probably feels it's less chemistry than others, but yeah, that's
it's really fun to listen to. It seems like you two are having fun. I actually just listened to the episode, and again, this is going way back because I'm trying to catch up with the size-changing spider on the garage door opener. Every time she's like, "It was the size of my hand," and then you say something, she's like, "It was the size of my head."
Yeah, that's these things happen. And we start to talk about it. I'm like, no, don't talk about it. We'll save it, and we'll talk about it on the bungalow because I would rather people know that you almost got me killed by swinging at a spider in the car and screaming like a maniac. And that spider was the size of a pinhead. It was the tiniest little creature.
Well, it's great fun.
No matter what she says. So.
And I still have plenty to catch up on. Now let's see. So, and I think, was it in the newsletter or on Twitter? You recently recorded an episode?
Yeah, we just recorded an episode on Sunday that I think went live yesterday or the day before. So there's a new episode out right now on Nerdy Legion is our host. But you can get it. They're always listed on my website and my newsletter and things like that, and on Twitter and everything else. But yeah, we just recorded a new episode just a few days ago, where we talk about it's a longer episode because we hadn't talked in a few weeks. We talk about all sorts of nonsense, and I actually had comic book news, which over the pandemic, it's sometimes that hasn't been the case. Where she asked me what's going on in the world of comics, and I'm just kind of like, nothing.
Well, that's great. I listen to them at work, so I like a longer episode.
Yeah, I would love to be able to listen to podcasts while I work, but I can't. I can't write and listen to people talking. I can't even listen to music with lyrics when I'm working. It has to be no lyrics or dead silence.
Right. I can't read if there's.
Oh yeah.
But I work in a factory, and so I can just I've got the job I need to do sitting in front of me, and I can pop the ear.
That's awesome.
Only one. We're not allowed to have both ears plugged up. But I have a Bluetooth headphones or earbuds, so I just put that in and I do my work while I'm listening.
Well, thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's great fun. Let's see what else. Okay, how about Centralia,
yeah.
Centralia. Okay, well, here's Centralia, Epicenter. How did this come together?
So I am part of a small movie production group called Hustle and Heart with my partner Heath Amodio. And Heath is always coming up with different ideas for different projects, different things that he wants to pull together. Because even though it's a movie production group, Heath is one of those guys who he's just like got ideas for everything. Short stories, comics, podcasts. He's always coming up with new ideas. And he came to me and said, have you ever heard of a town, of the Towns of Centralia? And there are numerous, I think there's a dozen towns of Centralia in the United States. And so many of them have something very weird that has gone on around, around that Centralia. So he had this idea that what if they were somehow connected? What if there was, some sort of connecting force that was causing, these weird events. And what if we put an anthology of short stories together, and each story introduced a new supernatural detective of some kind. And I love the idea of it. I love supernatural detectives anyway. That's right up my alley. So we, Heath and I both wrote a story for it, and then we contacted a number of other writers that we like and admire. Some friends of mine, people that I knew, wanted to write some stories, and we just put this really weird collection of stories together. My story is, we all selected a different Centralia. So mine is Centralia, Missouri, and we just wrote a story that takes place there. And the idea is we're going to do 2 more of those books, and as we do more, the stories are going to start coming together a little more, and the characters are going to start meeting and interacting, and then it will resolve a much bigger mystery by the end of the 3rd book.
Well, first of all, your story had me at necromancer.
That's I'm glad necromancer is what got you. Yeah.
And Heath Amodio is probably the only person whose name was not familiar to me when I picked this up. And you had this sort of teasing campaign, for lack of a better word, on Twitter. Just little hints, like a countdown. And as soon as the countdown hit 0, I ordered this book. I'm a huge Brian Keene fan. Adam, I always say Cesare. He says seizure. Of course, I'm familiar with Brian Quinn. Haven't read anything by him before.
Sure.
And Michael Patrick Hicks. I just got to make sure I get the right.
Yes, Michael Patrick Hicks.
Because cover art by Keelan Patrick Burke, and I always have to make sure I don't mix those.
Oh, yeah, I didn't think about that. Those 2 names do have a little bit of a similarity, I guess, don't they? But yeah. No, like I said, it was definitely a book of me just wanting to get people I admire and I like to all be involved in in a project together. So when he suggested that idea, I was all in.
As everybody, are the next 2 books? Is it going to be the same authors now?
That's the plan. Yeah, the plan is that everybody that was involved in this one will be doing the next 2 books as well. So it's obviously everything depends on schedules and what everybody's up to, but everybody that participated was in on doing this as we go forward. We're all going to work on it together.
That's I did watch a bit of the live panel you had right around the time it came out.
It was like a week or so after the book came out, I guess. Yeah.
And those are always fun to watch and see the creatives and the behind the scenes and all of that.
Yeah, and it's still out there. It's still on YouTube. If people want to watch it, you can. It's not live, obviously, but it's still plenty of good material in that episode.
And another project I believe you're still working on is, because again, a lot of this I get from your newsletter and such.
Sure.
You still working on an RPG?
So yeah, I'm doing a few things that are RPG related or adjacent. So I've been doing a comic strip called Deepest Catacombs. Mm-hmm. And Deepest Catacombs is a fantasy RPG epic story. But you may remember this. You were reading comics back in the day as well. Dungeons and Dragons used to release these 1-page comic book ads that were in, you get a comic book and there's a 1-page ad that was an actual comic strip. And it always followed this group of characters, and it was continued from one to the next. And I loved them. Bill Willingham did most of them. Not all of them, but most of them. But I loved them when I was a kid. So Deepest Catacombs is an ongoing epic fantasy adventure, but it's told in 1-page comics that are the style of ads for a role-playing game that didn't exist, for the Deepest Catacombs role-playing system. And we did 24 pages, 25. 24 or 25. The last one just came out a couple of days ago, and they're free to read. If you go to my website, there's links to them. You can read the entire thing from 1 to 25 now. You can read them all. I post them a little early for people on my Patreon, so people can read them there first, but then in a few days they go live across the board. And yeah, it's every page is by a different artist. And it was a fun sort of experiment for me to write this story. And then we did produce a lot of role-playing content. So if a monster appears in one of the pages of Deepest Catacombs, we wrote the stats up and a description of that monster so that if you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, you can take that monster and plug it into your Dungeons and Dragons campaign. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. And then I'm working on a number of role-playing game projects right now, none of which have been announced yet.
Okay.
But during the pandemic, I kind of got out of role-playing games for a while because I just didn't have people to play them with. During the pandemic, though, I've gotten back into it because I can play online and I can, I get to interact with people in some way at least. And I've really, it's gotten me back into that side of things in a big way. And yeah, I'm working on 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 different role-playing projects right now. I'm involved at various levels in them. Some I'm really involved in, others I'm sort of just tangentially involved with. But yeah, a lot of role-playing stuff right now. But yeah, if you like fantasy stories, Deepest Catacombs, free comic book you can read right online right now. Every page of it is, I think, live at this point.
Is D&D still your, or has it ever been your favorite role-playing game, or?
I don't, look, it's hard. Yes, at some point it was definitely my favorite role-playing game, and it's probably the thing I've played more than any other game, hands down. It's got to be, the game I've played more than any other. But I also, at different times, Call of Cthulhu was my favorite role-playing game, or Vampire the Masquerade was my favorite role-playing game. It's hard. It would be difficult if you were to put a list of role-playing games up and say, have you, name the ones you haven't played. It's going to be hard for me to find one that I haven't played at least one night. Maybe I played it, it's like, this isn't for me. But I've played so many of those games at this point. And even when I wasn't playing role-playing games regularly, there are shelves and shelves of supplements over here and books, because a lot of it I find to have a lot of inspirational value, and I just like looking through them sometimes. So I definitely keep all the Call of Cthulhu supplements over here, and all I haven't played Call of Cthulhu maybe Cthulhu in a couple of years, and Vampire the Masquerade I haven't played in years and years, decades, and but I still keep all the books on the shelf because I love them so much. And then nowadays I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons, but we're playing the Sandy Peterson games. Sandy Peterson was instrumental in the Call of Cthulhu role-playing game, and he does a board game called Cthulhu Wars, but he also does a series of Dungeons and Dragons modules, or 5th edition modules, that all have sort of a Cthulhu horror bend to them, and we've been playing those a lot.
I actually, last Saturday, I just bought Cthulhu Wars Duel.
Oh, nice. Yeah, the 2-player version. Yeah, I have not gotten that yet. Because I love Cthulhu Wars so much, and one of my pre-pandemic, we would get together every couple of weeks and just have this massive Cthulhu Wars game, and I'm really looking forward to that again.
I would love to have that game for the minis, for the gameplay, but I don't have a good group of people to play that with.
Yeah, you need it's when we were really playing, I've got a notebook somewhere where we were tracking who won the games, and we had like a list of everything and what outer god they were playing when they won and things like that. But yeah, it's the miniatures in that game are gorgeous.
Another notebook. This
Is that your role
is
playing?
I'm addicted to tabletop games, and in this book are the stats for
There
all
you
of the
go.
tabletop games. Well, not just basically winners and losers
Sure.
of this entire thing is filled up. Uh, all these pages. I started a second one because I have so many different games, and yeah, we keep track of who's won, who's lost.
Yeah, I've got a lot, and even I mean, my board game purchasing has slowed down a lot, but I know even I think I got the Trail at House on the Hill Legacy Edition, but I haven't even had a chance to open it because I've had no one to play it with right now because we're not getting together in person. And I just got the Solomon Kane board game a couple of
Is
days.
that what the box was that you?
Yeah, it's the
Oh,
Solomon Kane board game. So I still have several out there that I've kickstarted that will be coming to me at some point. But
I
but
want
yeah,
that Solomon Kane game.
yeah, it's a pretty looking game. I haven't unwrapped it because at this point I'm like I've already texted all my friends and said when we're back to game nights, this is the first thing we're cracking open. So
He is my favorite Robert E. Howard character.
mine as well.
Um, I did not get to back that. I backed the Conan game.
Yeah.
Um, I know there are several.
Yeah, there are a couple. I have one of them. I don't know which one it is, but yeah.
But I backed which came in. Since I backed it, two huge boxes of content.
Yeah.
And but so you do play board games and tabletop games as well as role playing?
I do. I do. Definitely over the last few years, I got more into board games than I had been in the past. Mainly, again, because I think I prefer role playing games, but, I have so many friends who just don't play, and we still want to get together and do something. They're all up for board games usually.
I actually, long time ago when I was preteen, teenager, I was actually the first person in my neighborhood to have Dungeons and Dragons, first edition.
Mm-hmm.
And then my friends killed me off one day when I couldn't make it to our session. But
They just axed you. You brought them into the game, into the hobby, and they killed you.
They started throwing me at everything.
Nice.
I guess as punishment for not being able to show up.
Yeah.
But when Elder Sign came out, the dice game,
Yeah,
Elder Sign, that was what re-kickstarted and restarted my addiction for tabletop games. So I love deck building games, and anytime I can chuck dice.
Yeah.
And I have Betrayal Legacy.
Yeah, I love it. I'm not as I mentioned my friend Jimmy earlier. He has a ton of board games, and of course he runs a store, so he gets even more. And he does, he has weekly board game nights at his. I don't know if he's doing it right now. I'm sure he's not, but board game nights at the store and stuff like that. So when I started getting into board games, he was sort of my my liaison into that world to some degree.
One of the nice things about my shop that I go to is you can pre-order Kickstarter games. They will back it for you.
Oh, wow.
And then you don't have to pay until it comes in.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
You get all the perks and stretch goals and stuff.
That's pretty smart. Because
I'm actually
I was just
go ahead.
No, I was just saying that's an interesting idea because that's one of the things I feel like I love Kickstarters, and I have several Kickstarters planned for the next year, but it's difficult to get the retailer to figure the retailer side of it out. So that sounds like a retailer who has said, "Oh, we've got it figured out. We know how to do this," and that's a good idea. It's smart thinking.
I'm waiting for the perks for Marvel United.
Oh, yeah.
Because they had a weird rollout for that game. Sure. So I've got the base game. This month is when the perks are supposed to come out. So I'll just get a call from or an email from the comic shop, and pop in and pick up my free stuff.
Yeah, that's pretty great. Pretty great idea.
Well, speaking of Kickstarter, you just had a project that I believe ended yesterday.
Oh, yeah, the Dynamite book. I guess it did end yesterday. That was so Dynamite did the book on Indiegogo instead of
Right,
Kickstarter.
Rob. Yes,
Yeah.
Indiegogo.
Yeah. But yeah, the Reanimator, The Eternal Lie, just wrapped up yesterday, that I'm doing with Blackie Shepherd. It's a big 40-page Reanimator story, and yeah, I mean it funded, so it will be coming out. That's the good news. So we'll
How does
see how
that?
it goes.
And you say it's from Dynamite,
Yeah.
who is a? I mean, they're not one of the big two, obviously, but they're not super tiny. I wouldn't think.
Right.
So, how do you know how the decision is made to put something like that on Kickstarter as opposed to just bringing it out?
Well, Dynamite, I don't know how Dynamite came to that decision originally for their other projects, but they've done tons of projects now on Indiegogo and Kickstarter. I think they've got at least one or two going every month, a new project, and so they've been doing that for a while now. And this was just it's an interesting pre-order system for them. They can see if people are going to like the book. They can they have the guaranteed orders at that point, and it kind of works it can help them build buzz depending on what they're doing. But I would say you're going to see more and more publishers doing this. Boom just did it with Berserker, and I think it's the biggest comic book Kickstarter of all time. I think they brought in, well over $1 million on that Kickstarter. Oh. I may be wrong, but that may be wrong. But they brought in a ton of money, and I don't know if it was the biggest Kickstarter of all time or comic Kickstarter of all time, but I would be shocked if it wasn't. They brought in $1.4 million.
Wow.
And when comic book publishers start seeing those kind of numbers pulling down, it's just gonna be more and more doing it. Again, it's an interesting way to create some buzz about the book, see who's gonna read that book, create an edition of the book that you might not be able to get otherwise, because I'm sure these books will be in the stores as well, but they'll probably be a different cover or different format, something like that. So I will not be surprised if you don't see more and more doing it. The board game, obviously board game companies have figured it out a long time ago, and they're, we can see how successful they are. Role-playing games have figured it out, and they're very successful on Kickstarter. And, if the quality's there, it's a great way to get people to pick up these books. So yeah, I think you'll see more and more publishers doing it, which is great as long as it doesn't change. I love that Kickstarter is something I get stuff that I don't see everywhere. I like that these projects I get on these things I fund on Kickstarter, it's usually stuff that I don't think I'm going to just see anywhere else, or at least I'm not going to see a lot of them anywhere else. And that's one of the things I like about it.
Well, that and like the Reanimator book had some really nice perks.
It did, yeah. Well, that's the real fun part of any kind of crowdfunding, is when you can get the fun, the perks. Because we had stickers and enamel pins, and we had ink pens that look like syringes full of gross fluid, and yeah, it had some fun additional items. And I think, it's a fun story because we're getting to take the story of Reanimator back to the 1920s, and it has nothing to do with the movies. It's all sort of a sequel to that original short story.
Well, that's very cool. Excuse me. Yeah. I think it just ended yesterday.
Yeah, I just looked up. I guess shame on me for not knowing that it ended yesterday. Well, it ended a while ago and they decided to extend it. So I didn't miss it. I did miss the ending yesterday, but It's because they extended it on me, so it's their fault. Their fault. I blame Dynamite.
I didn't know they could do that.
Right? Yeah, I think you can't do it on Kickstarter, but I guess Indiegogo you can do it on. I've only done my own projects. I only do through Kickstarter, so that's what I'm most familiar with.
I think most of the things I've backed have been Kickstarter.
Yeah.
I think there's one project I backed on. I think it was Indiegogo that did not fund, but I still got my perk, which was nice.
Well, that's interesting.
And are you familiar with the Chainsaw Sally or the Chainsaw Sally show?
I'm not.
Chainsaw Sally's a low budget independent horror movie made by Jimmy O. Burrell. And I picked up the original movie at a convention and met his wife. April is the actress that plays Chainsaw Sally. Got to meet her, but they did an online TV show series. They actually you could watch it with a laugh track or without a laugh track.
With or without laugh track.
Very horrific, very gory. And I think the second season they had on Indiegogo. So if you backed it, you got to watch it online a day before it dropped, and then got once the whole series was out online, then they released it as a DVD, and you get it signed and all the perks, which is all really nice. So I think that's the only other thing I backed on Indiegogo. Kickstarter seems to be the place to be.
That's what, yeah, it's definitely what I prefer, the stuff on there. I mean, again, nothing against, whatever, if you choose to do Indiegogo, I guess, but, or Dynamite's choice to go with Indiegogo. Again, they've done many projects there successfully, but Kickstarter for me, is just a better place, I think, to represent the stuff I'm putting together.
Okay. Let's see. I feel like I'm forgetting something else that I wanted to talk about before getting into some of the new stuff that you have coming out. So we already talked about Eden a little bit. And then before we get to the, I hate to use air, big one, Phantom on the Scan.
Yes, Phantom on the Scan.
Correct title.
Yeah.
So that's coming out soon. What's that all about?
So it is a 5-issue series from Aftershock. My co-creator on the book is Mark Torres, who I did a book with called Cold Spots a while ago, and it is a psychic horror story. Very I guess what's influenced or in the vein of things like Scanners or Firestarter or any of those sort of horror tales about psychic powers gone amok. And it's about a group of psychics who they've developed various different psychic abilities over the years, and they're all starting to die off. Their powers seem to be killing them, and it's happening more and more frequently, and they band together to figure out why their powers are killing them and how to stop it. And it's a lot of psychic craziness, but then a lot of body horror and blood and gore, and Mark Torres is just such a great artist and does such an amazing job of building mood and ambience through the panels. It's a really pretty book. I just turned in the final script, and he I get to see pages every day, so I'm always excited about that.
All right. Well, I've already got it pre-ordered.
Yeah, it's. I think it'll be a fun book. It's going to be. Like I said, it's a 5-issue series. You can get in, enjoy the series, and it when it comes to an end, it's a lot of fun.
I'm always torn when it comes to miniseries between buying the floppies, the monthly issues, or waiting for the trade.
Well, the best thing is to buy both the floppies and the trade. That's the best way to really support the comic creators. Buy them both. And that's going to be the age-old battle. Do you buy the trades? Do you buy the single issues? It's it's a tough, it just depends on how you want to read your books, I guess. And it's tough to say, because like in the world of ongoings, if everybody waits for the trades, there is going to be no floppies, or no series will last more than 11 issues at most. So everybody always asks, is this an ongoing series or a mini series? Every series is a mini series, unless people are supporting it. And it's but in the case of Phantoms on the Scan, it is supposed to be 5 issues, so it's already there. It's a 5-issue series.
Well, I do actually think about that. It's because I like having the collected editions. They look good on the shelf. But I do think about, well, I want the publisher to see that I'm interested in this book
Right
now, and buying the single issues is the way to do that.
Well, it's tough, because look, you got to buy I still say buy the books the way is right for you, like it's and support the books the way that works best for you and your reading habits, or whatever. You the to some degree, the publishers have to figure out that how do you keep the books alive if people wait for the trades. It's got to, it can't. Yes, it is a consumer market, and the consumers are a big part of it, but it can't all fall on your shoulders to determine if these books are going to it will determine it, but a lot of people read and trade, and my books have always done very well in trades, but the attrition of it's tough in a world where before the first issue of a series comes out, numbers on the second issue have already dropped by half, almost always. And, that's a sobering figure. You sell 40,000 your first issue, you can be pretty sure that before anyone's even read the first issue and knows if it's any good, it could be the best comic ever. The second issue is only going to sell 20,000 copies. So it's that's a tough pill for a publisher to swallow sometimes, I would think.
Well, I was out of the comic book reading game for a while, for a few years, so I missed out on a few things, which is why I'm very happy to have this.
Ah, yes, the omnibus edition's a great. If you missed Harrow County, that's a great way to pick that series back up for sure.
I do have the next one on order already.
Yeah. So the omnibus, the Harrow County omnibus, that one that you have there collects 16 issues of the series. So the next one collects the second 16 issues, and that's it. It was a 32 issue series. So you'll get 2 volumes, but that's a great way. It's a big, thick collection of stories, so it gives you a lot of stuff to sink your teeth into if you haven't read that yet.
And a good price.
Yeah, I can't. What is the price on that omnibus? I don't have my.
Oh, let's see.
It's like a 30-something, 40.
$29.99.
That's a good price for 16 issues of comics.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I don't even remember why I stopped buying. It was probably financial.
Yeah,
just couldn't afford to keep up with it. And I can tell you, it was when Avengers versus X-Men was coming out.
Mm-hmm.
Because I never picked up the entire series.
Right.
I stopped going to the comic shop, stopped buying, and it was actually, I came back with DC Rebirth and Hydra Captain America.
Sure.
I heard about those 2 things, and I thought, I'm going to go into the comic shop, see what's new.
They find a way to lure you back in, don't they?
Yeah. And now the comic shop I was going to, very small. The service wasn't that great, which is why I don't go there anymore. And they had to, for the most part, they ordered what their customers pre-ordered.
Yeah.
But so going to this new comic shop now, Comics R Go, Eric and Ed, they have just tons of new books, and sure. I've started picking up many more small publisher books, independent books. I'm loving AWA.
Oh yeah, they do some really great titles, some really cool stuff.
I actually got pulled in because of Krista Faust's Bad Mother.
Yeah.
So I'm a Krista Faust fan, and then started looking at their. I just read Chariot. I'm getting Man's World. I love Victor Gischler's stuff.
I haven't read Chariot yet, but that one looks really cool to me. Yeah.
I really dug the first issue, and again, the nice thing about this comic shop is they have enough. They'll have that on the shelf, so I can just pick up the first issue without having to pre-order, and then I can go in and say, "Hey, I like this. Now put me down for the rest of the series."
Hmm.
And then didn't you possibly have something from AWA?
I did. I did a series with them called Bite Sized, which was their first younger readers series. It's 8 to 12, geared towards 8 to 12 year olds. Although the young at heart can enjoy it too, which is it's a story about a group of what is uh, we've been calling them scary cute or spooky cute robots. This group of weird robots escapes from the government facility that developed them, and ends up in this suburban home on Christmas Eve. And the robots are all small and cute, so they're mistaken at first for toys. But then, of course, hijinks ensue, and they run amok and raise all sorts of heck and chaos. But yeah, it's a fun story. If you want to get your kids into comics, it's a fun comic for them. It's like I said, it's got these. We've been calling, I think Nelson Blake, who drew the series. I think he coined the term, and I want to say he calls it spooky cute or scary cute or creepy cute, something like that. Because the robots are adorable, but they're also got a little bit of a sinister quality to them. So it's funny because a couple of people know a lot of the kind of stuff I write, and they asked me. I was getting messages. Is this going to be going to be too scary for my kids? Because reading the first issue, I can't tell if it's going to be a terrifying book or not. and I was like, well, it's supposed to be there's a little bit of menace to it. You don't know what these robots are up to just yet. But I think it's a great book for kids for sure.
Well, as I said, I found AWA through Bad Mother, so I missed out on some of their first round of books, but I'm definitely picking them up in the collected editions because I'm really, really loving everything I'm reading from them. But speaking of things for a younger audience coming from you, you've got something else that's coming out soon?
July, I believe that it comes out. So I have a book coming out from HarperCollins called The Ghoul Next Door. And it is a graphic novel drawn and watercolored by the amazing Kat Ferris. And this book is it's a 200-page horror graphic novel for kids. Again, it's written with 8 to 12-year-olds in mind, but I really believe adults will enjoy it because there's a lot of it's not we don't necessarily try to hold back on the spookiness and the scares. And there's a lot of crazy mythology that we're building. We're doing a lot of, world building and mythology building and legend building around this weird little town that these characters live in. But it's a story of a kid who is taking his school project to school one morning, and he takes a shortcut through a graveyard, as you do, and he loses his school project. It's taken by this creature that seems to be living down in an open grave, and originally I was going to call this thing a ghoul ate my homework, but we changed the Ghoul Next Door. But he ends up forging this sort of unlikely friendship with this mysterious creature, this ghoul, who lives underground in this vast metropolis underground, and it causes a number. They run afoul of a witch, and they're not supposed, ghouls aren't supposed to interact with humans, and it's a lot of fun, and I think it's a sweet story it's a very sweet story for a story about creatures that eat the dead, and it's I always said I think it'll be fun for spooky kids are gonna love it, but spooky adults will like it too, I think, and that comes out in July from HarperCollins, and you'll be able to get it from any bookstore. It's available for pre-order right now on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and everything.
All right, and now where I used my air quotes for big, Valiant,
yes,
and Shadowman.
Yes.
What are you bringing to Shadowman?
So I just reread the first issue of Shadowman today. I went back through it and I said, let me see if I really feel the same way about this. And I reread the issue. And I'm convinced this is a book, when it comes out, it will be unlike any other book on the shelf. It has a different approach to the story, a different approach to Shadowman. The art is amazing and it'll look so much different than what you're expecting from a Shadowman comic and what what you'll be seeing on the shelves at the time. It is, if you are familiar with the Shadowman character, if you've been following Valiant for years, you're going to be able to pick this up and run with it. It picks right up where the last series, or not right up, but it follows on the footsteps of the last series. If you've never read Shadowman before, who cares? Pick up the first issue. You will be able to understand that character 100%. I'll go so far as to say you can pick up any issue of my Shadowman run and completely enjoy that issue on its own, because every issue kind of stands on its own as a beginning, middle, and end, even though it's part of a bigger story arc. Even though it's a superhero comic, and there is definitely a lot of superheroic action, because Shadowman, if you're unfamiliar, is this guy who his spirit has been bound with the Shadow Loa, and it gives him a number of superpowers. He's strong, he's fast, he can control shadows, he can move through shadows. He doesn't know fear. He can't be afraid because of the power of the Shadow Loa. And he punches bad guys. I mean, there's a lot of monster punching in this, but it's also very much a horror book, and there's a lot of horror elements in this series. I try to play with different horror subgenres in every issue, so every issue has a little bit of a different flavor, a little different feel, different mood. Some are very dark, some are a little more, some might even veer towards, lighthearted, but they're all horror, some flavor of horror. So if you're a fan of horror fiction, you're going to love this thing as well. I'm really proud of the book we put together with Shadowman. It's Shadowman's one of the characters I feel like I was born to write, because of that fusion of superheroes and horror. So I really feel like it was right up my alley to be writing this character.
Now, I did read some Shadowman way back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I'm mixing him up with somebody else. Was he the saxophone player?
He does. He is a sax player.
Okay. All right. I do have that one ordered as well.
Yeah.
Written down in my little notebook.
He is a musician, and in the past, he's always been in New Orleans. Mm-hmm. And I love New Orleans, but we're taking Shadowman out of New Orleans. This is a much bigger world that he's kind of exploring. He's moving from place to place. So the first issue is in New Orleans, but the second issue is not. The third issue is in someplace else. He's moving somewhere around than the fourth issue. So it's much more of sort of a globe hopping adventure in a lot of ways.
And is this an ongoing?
Yes, yeah, it's an ongoing series, or like we said earlier, it's as ongoing as any series is. But yeah, it is intended as an ongoing series. I really want to put a mark on the supernatural side of the Valiant universe. I want to see something. I want it to make a big impact, and I feel like we're introducing some new characters and some new elements that should play a big role in Valiant as a whole going forward.
All right, very cool. Again, I'm so looking forward to that one. All right. So you said you haven't been to the comic shop in a while. So what books are they pulling for you? What modern or recent comics are you reading or hoping to read?
So I have been reading Exo Manowar by my enemy Dennis Hopeless. I've been reading that, and I really enjoy it. Like I'm excited to read the Bad Idea stuff. I've seen some hints of that stuff, and my friend Matt Kent writes is doing several books for them. There are there's a new Image book coming out that I think looks pretty exciting. That I think maybe the first issue came out today, so I should. Silver Coin. Is that the book I'm
Uh,
thinking?
it did not come out today, or if it, I don't think it did because it should have been in my file.
Maybe I'm a little bit. I am a little bit. It's still on pre-order. So I have that on reserve. It comes out in early April. Silver Coin, which I think looks really exciting, really interesting. And then from a Kickstarter point of view, Brian Hurt, Matt Kent, and Marie Inger did a Kickstarter a while back for a big, thick anthology called the Heck Anthology. And I have not. I'm waiting for that book. I'm just. I'm salivating. I'm ready for that book. Everything I see about it looks amazing. I love those kind of crazy anthology stories. So I'm excited about that one too.
All right, great. Have you checked out, let's say, Stillwater?
Why does Stillwater sound familiar? Who
Uh,
published Stillwater?
I want to say it's Image, Chip Zdarsky.
Maybe I was thinking of. Oh, that is Chip Zdarsky's book. I was thinking of Silver Coin when I have not read Stillwater yet.
Oh,
Um,
fantastic. I think anyway. I'm loving it.
oh yeah, that's the Ramon Perez. Ramon Perez is doing art on that book, isn't he? Yeah, yeah. It. I'm sure it's gorgeous. Um, yeah, that's one I have not. But I would be surprised if that's not in my pull list at the name of my friend. Since we plugged your shop, the name of Jimmy Z's shop is Little Shop of Comics in Cuba, Missouri. But yeah, so I'm certain that book is in my pile in Cuba, Missouri right now.
Like I said earlier, I think I'm getting more independent stuff now, at least monthly, than from Marvel and DC. And
Oh
just
man.
again, things like Stillwater, Knock 'em Dead, the AWA stuff, more from Aftershock,
Yeah.
and just there's so many. And again, I was gone for a while, but it really seems like there's a horror renaissance in comics right now.
There's definitely, definitely a lot more horror comics coming out now, which is awesome for the horror fan. And yes, you can that's an independent. That's the power of independent comics, because I don't feel like the big two have figured out horror yet. They haven't quite figured out how to make that work. They've got some great characters that they could do some really cool things with. Um, but yeah, there's a big horror renaissance, I think, in comics. Um, and you were talking about great comics. And great horror comics. Look at Vault with the books like The Plot. If you haven't read The Plot, it's awesome. And the Audible, that book's. I haven't got my copies yet, but I've been lucky enough to read them on PDF. I've seen them. I've had a chance to read them, and that's an amazing book. There's just really so many great, interesting publishers out there right now.
I feel like boy, I hope I'm not wrong. I just picked up The Wrong Earth, which I think is from Vault.
Wrong Earth is that Vault? I thought it was that might be Vault. No, I thought it was not Vault, but you might be right.
It's well,
No, it's Ahoy Comics.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Wow. I was not only completely wrong, but at the wrong end of the alphabet.
Well, hey, it's okay. That's
why.
Jamal Eigel did the art on that book, and
I swear I just either picked up or looked at something from Vault, and now I can't. I don't know.
They do a lot of really good books. They're doing the Masquerade.
There you go.
Right
That's
now.
what I
Yeah.
just picked up issue 6.
And those books are just gorgeous. I mean, they're just really good looking books. And there's a series that I haven't read any of them yet, except what I see like the preview stuff. But as soon as I saw it, I called Jimmy and I was like, okay, pull all of these books. It's going to be a frightening day when I finally drive down to Little Shop of Comics and have to pay for that pile of books. But oh well. Thanks, Jimmy.
Yeah. And I was going to mention it earlier when we were talking about games. The Vampire the Masquerade book has supplemental game material.
Oh, does it?
Based on the characters from the comic.
Yeah, very cool.
Gives you the stats and it gives you some, I think, small scenarios and different things.
Yeah, I did not even know that. I just wanted them because it just looked like it just looked awesome, and my love of Vampire the Masquerade won out in that respect.
I was a big fan of the whole White Wolf.
Oh yeah.
Back in the day, I used to have, I think I used to have, unfortunately, all of the novels.
I think I still have some of them somewhere. I was gonna say I would be surprised if, and I would be wrong. I was gonna say I'd be surprised if there wasn't at least one White Wolf supplement. There is. One White Wolf supplement within easy reach at my desk, and I was right. So I've got a Mage the Ascension supplement here,
nice,
which I had pulled out to look at for some reason a couple of days ago. So yeah, I'm always referencing that stuff.
All right, well. I don't want to keep you forever. So, is there anything else you wanted to talk about, mention, plug?
Well, I just say, if you're interested in my work or learning more about my work, you can always find me at Cullen Bunn. On Twitter is at Cullen Bunn. My website is cullenbunn.com. I just started a Discord channel about a week ago that you can find the link to from my website. Where I've been calling it, if you imagine going up and talking to me at a table at a convention and you just talk about either comics or movies or horror or gaming or whatever you want to talk about, this Discord channel is it kind of simulates that, where we can just talk about whatever we want to. I have a Patreon, which is Cullen Bunn, if you want to check that out. Like I said, there's some free content on there as well as stuff that you can back and support. But so there's lots. You can find me in all sorts of places, and I don't know when this is going out. When will you be putting this out there?
This will be up tomorrow.
Okay, so good. On Sunday of this week is my 10-year anniversary as a full-time comic book writer, and I'm going to be doing all sorts of stuff all day long on Sunday on Twitter, on the Discord channel. I'm going to be giving away prizes. I'm going to be talking about comics. I'm going to be doing live Q&As throughout the day. So lots of cool stuff that day. So if you happen to have some free time on Sunday, you're locked in your house and you can't go anywhere, this is your chance to hang out, because I'm going to be hanging out all day long just talking about comics and my my time in comics and what I've learned and what I think's coming next, whatever that may be.
Well,
I'm going to figure that part out before Sunday.
Well, I would recommend to anyone watching this that they sign up for your newsletter, and you do tease a lot of things. At the end there, you've got your bullet points.
Yeah, if you want to know what's coming up, that newsletter always, and there's stuff that I tease stuff in that newsletter that I've been forbidden to talk about. So there's, and it comes out almost every Sunday morning. Almost every Sunday morning, the newsletter comes out.
All right. Well, I'm going to do my outro here, and if you could just stick around for a minute after I stop recording. But first of all, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks to the folks for watching, and those of you out there, if you have any comments or questions, please put them in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel on YouTube here, self-plug. And so I guess that's it. This has been the Low Budget Interview Show with Cullen Bunn. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
And until next time, people out there, read more books.